Hello, everybody. It is 11:07 p.m. Central Time on the 23rd of September, 2018. It is Sunday night here in the United States, going into Monday internationally, and we are here on the Earthquake 3D live stream to do a new global earthquake forecast for the coming 7-day time period. Now, this week is a little special. We have an overlapping forecast that started on Wednesday night, and that's going to be carried on for the next 3 days or so. And that's based upon our deep earthquake that happened 6 days ago. Big, deep 6.5 struck down below the West Pacific. You see it raised high off the globe here and marked in red for days old back on the 16th. 605 kilometers deep. And whenever we get deep earthquakes like this, we watch for 7 to 10 days from the point where the deep earthquake occurs. Let me turn on a display capture here so you can see my mouse, and you'll see our letter D here. It stands for deep earthquakes, and we look for deep earthquakes to occur where our letter Ds are placed on the map. And so, deep earthquake struck here, and we look for 10 days, spreading out from the deep quake, to have large activity spread out. Now, how large are we going to look for off a deep 6.5 coming in at 605 kilometers deep? Well, we can reference our depth to magnitude conversion chart put together by Bella and Rebecca. And Bella and Rebecca, two of our fellow researchers, looking at 600, you'll see we need to add on 1.2 potential magnitude to this deep quake. So if we add on 1.2 to the 6.5, that takes us up to 7.7 potential. 7.7 potential next to this deep 6.5. That's likely, or a series of large earthquakes spreading out and away from the deep quake. We usually see one of the two happen. Either a spread of large quakes spreads out and away from the deep quake, or a single larger earthquake strikes right next to the deep quake. You know, when I say right next to, that's a relative term. It could be a few thousand miles over to the west. Usually it's a few thousand miles between points where the force comes up. Now let me quickly explain before we get into the forecast. The deep earthquakes create a leveraging action, and I think a standing wave is forming, but I'm not going to get too technical on you tonight, only then to tell you that the middle points between our sets of quakes tend to be the spots that are hit next. And this earthquake marked in green that just struck no more than 10 minutes ago, this is the perfect example of an earthquake striking between earthquakes that happened over the past day and a half. Do you see our 5s that struck yesterday over in Indonesia? And do you see our 4.7 that struck yesterday going into today over in the Solomon Islands? You see our 6 and 5.9 to the north up at Guam. This, where the green earthquake is now, was an open silent zone when I did my update, no more than an hour ago. And I showed it to you, and I showed it to you last night. Now, we warned for this on Wednesday night. There was a 50,000-foot high blast right in the middle of this red arrow this past week. And since then, no large earthquake activity breaking out at the location itself. Now it became a silent zone where there were no earthquakes. So now in the middle point, a new 5 has struck, and it's the combined total of what's on both sides. 5.0 plus 4.7 plus 5.2. Now whether or not they come in at a 5 or a 5.1, or you get the picture. The middle point is the spot that's filled in. So why does that happen? Well, a standing wave, and that gets into a technical explanation that I don't think anybody is ready to hear yet. As we go across, we're going to start here in the West Pacific. We always start our forecasts in the West Pacific, where our deep earthquakes occur. And then we look between our current sets of quakes to find what we call our silent zones. Then we look to the middle of our silent zones for the spot where the release is going to happen, starting right here next to New Caledonia. This is the point where we're warning for our 7-point-something, and we're going to put it up to 7.6 potential that could happen in the next several days here, east of New Caledonia. So our middle fulcrum point, east of New Caledonia, is our first spot to watch, and that's where we would have the potential for a large earthquake to strike. For my people down in New Zealand, look, ever since our big deep quake down below Zealandia, you guys have remained high and dry with just a few fours. And those are striking at both tips of the island, with every earthquake that's been striking at the center of New Zealand being reported as a ghost quake. Over and over again. All these ghost quakes. Ghost quake, ghost quake, ghost quake. Yeah, okay. Casper the Friendly Ghost taking over on your seismographs. Well, you're missing earthquakes, and whether we want to say that they're striking and they're not, there's a deliberate lack of earthquakes from Mother Nature. And deliberate, I mean there's been a shift that has happened down below Zealandia that's preventing you from moving as normal right now. Now, as normal? Yes, as normal. You normally have a way that you normally move, and that's not happening anymore. You know how we know there's a normal way? We observed it go do the same thing for years. Before the big quake, a couple of years ago, and even after, up until recently, up until the big deep quake happened down below Zealandia. Something shifted. So we're going to watch. You need to watch along with me. For what? Normal activity, of course. What's normal in New Zealand? From what I understand, it goes all the way up to 7. That's normal. You know how I know that's normal? When the 7 struck down here, people came in, told me, see, you got to understand. You remember the big earthquake that struck down here in New Zealand in Kaikoura, right? When Kaikoura got hit, we had issued a warning for that. And it was a 7 that struck. Go read the comments below the video. It's normal. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Happens all the time. So what? You issued a warning for a 7. We get those all the time. We're earthquake savvy. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay? So this week, we're going to watch and we're going to wait for 4s to show up. As we go over to the west, we get into the middle of our second silent zone. This one here in between our other 2 sets of quakes. Now, what are we going to look for? Well, we have a series of deep quakes that have happened here, not just one. I'm going to warn for a 6.3 to 6.4 to be striking in the middle of the Solomon Islands, to keep in line with the 6.4 that just struck over here at Guam. Next 5 days, most likely. Going over to the west, we're going to warn right here in between the 2 sets of quakes. We're going to warn for a 6.1 to be striking here. This 6.4 should lose a little bit of energy by the time it comes over to the west, and we should get a 6.1 dropped off as the energy is coming across in between our 2 sets of quakes. This goes into eastern Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands. Western Papua New Guinea, between our 3 sets of quakes. This goes here, right in between all 3. We have to add all the 5s together. We get to a 5.5 cumulative total, striking right in the middle in between our 2 warned areas. If you live over in Indonesia, we're going to warn for our central point. This goes back to Agung next to Lombok. Agung might even return back on the list, volcanically speaking. You see how it's sandwiched between the 4.6 and the 5.0? What's the size we're going to look for? 5.6 to 5.7. So if it's going to be a 5.5 over here, we're going to add in the volcanic eruptions that are taking place at Krakatau, and they're getting pretty big. So that's going to add in a little bit more juice to this, and this means right here, Central South Indonesia. We're going to be watching for you to start to move again. Again, volcanic eruption could happen. I don't normally forecast eruptions, but it's falling right on top of Mount Agung. And I think it's going to be a little larger than what strikes over here. Don't fault me if it comes in 5.9. But I'm looking for a mid-range 5 to be coming in, okay? As we go further up to the north, we have a middle fulcrum point in Philippines. Sandwiched here in between our 2 sets of quakes, we have a 5.2, a 4.4, and over here a 6.4. So let's warn for a 6.3 to be striking in Philippines this week, as equal distance, equal distribution of force across the zone. Middle point between our 2 sets of quakes, central Philippines along the coast. Up to the north, we go into the Kuril Islands. We go into the Volcano Islands, going into North Japan on the Izu Ridge. Middle point coming next to Nishinoshima. Nishinoshima volcano on the Izu Ridge. Let's warn you for a 6.2 to 6.3. So we should be seeing a series of 6s pop off by the end of this week as we go up to the north. All of our other areas have been hit along our arrows. So we had several warned areas. Those have all been checked off the list. As we go into mainland Japan, I'm going to warn north here along the coast of Honshu, just south of Hokkaido. Everybody from Hokkaido down to Tokyo, we're going to warn right in the middle. Middle fulcrum point between our sets of quakes. We have to add in our eruptions and our 6 coming in from the south. This means 6.7 is likely in Japan, 6.6 to 6.7 again. Like the last time, sandwiched in between, but this time slightly different location. Please be ready from Hokkaido down to Tokyo, middle point in between the two. You see where the middle point is. So middle point here, we watch between the two. Why do I watch for 200 miles in each direction? I want you to be ready in case it's a larger quake. Going up to the north, up here into the Kamchatka Peninsula, we have multiple eruptions happening. Don't forget the eruptions also have a magnitude accumulation effect. We have a 5 here. We have 2 eruptions at volcanoes we have never seen on the list, Sarychev Peak and